Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. My mom gave me the idea to share a little bit more of a raw and real video about our family's recent decision to have a parent stay at home with our kids for the short term. And when she gave me the idea, I thought, you know what, that would not only be a really great introduction to who I am as a person, but it would also be a good opportunity to maybe allow somebody to hear from someone else on how hard that decision can be and maybe help guide them and give them kind of a little peer-to-peer help in what direction they should go with the decision. To give a little bit of a background on myself, I am your typical type A personality. I am always trying to be more efficient. Mom efficiency, hence the title of the channel. I'm always trying to get things done. I'm always trying to overachieve pretty much. That's who I am as a person. I like to get things done and I like to achieve. I worked the entire time that I was in college, therefore was able to buy my own home. I was able to pay for everything for myself, save some money, and not say it wasn't hard, but I was able to do all of that. And I graduated with a business degree. At the time, we were coming out of the recession and I was still able to find a solid job using my degree. I went into finance. In 2015, I got my MBA as well, which pushed my career further. And I have never regretted going down the career path that I've gone down. So I bring this up because I can say without a shadow of a doubt that I have always been a workaholic, always. I really enjoy the satisfaction that a job well done brings. I really enjoy the interpersonal relationships that come along with a job, whether that you're working at home or you're working in the office or retail or whatever that might be. I also really enjoy being able to start a project and see it all the way through the end. I don't do what I do for applause, and I don't do it for people to lift me up. I do it because Colossians 3:23, right? Work to glorify the kingdom of God, not to glorify myself. Now I'll stop here and I'll say this. I think that there's all kinds of different dynamics in terms of what is the best choice for work and life balance for a family, especially family with children. I would never be somebody who would tell others, hey, you're making the wrong choice by staying at home and not working, or hey, you're making the wrong choice by having childcare be your village and working and not staying at home. I would never ever say that. I believe everybody's situation is different, especially in the United States, where it's really hard to raise a family without two incomes. Just know that I do recognize that, and I'm not trying to tell anybody, hey, you know, this way's the best way or that way's the best way or whatnot. Let's also talk about how our family started. In December of 2019, I went to my husband and I said, hey, you know what? I don't know how you're feeling, but I feel like maybe we should have our own baby. And lo and behold, he had been feeling the same way. So we sat down and we talked about it, and we decided to start trying for our first baby. We have worked pretty much almost every single day of our lives to get where we are and to have a solid nest egg for retirement, but people aren't giving us anything, right? So we had to sit down and we had to think about that as well. So, okay, if we have this baby, what are we going to do in terms of our jobs? And we said, well, if that's how it's supposed to be, let's see how this pregnancy progresses, and then we can go from there and decide if one of us is gonna stay home from work. During that whole time, I was working a job in corporate finance, a job that I enjoyed. I had him, and I did go back to work. I believe it was about 8 or 9 weeks in by my choice. I worked for about a month full-time away from my son. My mother would watch him, or my husband would be home with him, and it became really difficult. Just given my son's personality and his needs, it became really difficult for my husband to be able to get his job done a couple days a week from home alongside of him. And then I started noticing the same thing. All of that added up to just being a lot of stress and me really feeling like I was inadequate as a mom in our current situation. I felt like the best thing for me to do would probably be to be at home with him at least part of the time. So I proposed that to my management team, and they were completely on board, and they worked with me to come up with a part-time situation. That worked for us for a really long time. It worked for us for 2 years. The income was still solid. It was an hourly equivalent of the income I was making prior. and I got to set my own days and hours. There were times I had to be on for meetings or go to the office for meetings, and then we had to figure out the childcare situation. But I got a lot of really wonderful quality time with my son. And alongside of that, I was still making a really solid income for my family. And now here's the thing, you guys. I know that that's not feasible for so many people, millions of people. They have a job where they have to be on the floor working, or they can't cut their hours, or whatever that might be. And I know that this probably then seems really unrelatable. If you had to make a yes or no decision either way because of location, environment, timing, anything like that, yeah, that's really hard. At that point in our lives, I did not understand what that sort of thing was like. I just rode the wave for 2 years, enjoying the opportunity that I had. It was a blessing for us to have that time together, and for me to still be able to work and provide for my family. So let's flash forward 2 years later. It did feel like the Lord was moving me away from that job, not for bad reasons or anything like that. So I started looking elsewhere, and I stumbled across a job that was gonna be like no commute. It was right down the street from our home. Pay was phenomenal. The type of work was perfect, and it was what I was looking for to further my career. And so I looked into it, and they hired me pretty quickly. And not only that, they worked out a deal with me where I really only had to go to the office 1 day a week. I ended up going in like 1.5 days a week, and I could do the rest from home. It was perfect, you guys, like perfect. So that worked out really well when I was pregnant with my daughter. My son started preschool like the next month after that and thrived, loved it, loved going. So once we figured out our schedule and we got through all the stress of all of that, it worked out really well. So then flash forward from May to October of 23, and we're having our baby. I'd worked out to have 8 weeks off with her and then go back to work on the schedule that I was on previously. And oh my goodness, I vastly underestimated how hard it was going to be to work a pretty stressful job. At that point, 5 months in, it had become a very stressful job with a lot of work and a lot of minute details and a lot of meetings and a lot of things like that. It required a lot of nighttime work. I was exhausted, in addition to being up with the baby who's breastfeeding every couple hours. And have 2 children with 2 very, very different sets of needs biologically and just their personalities. I was like, whoa, y'all, like, whoa. It wasn't feasible for me as a mom to be working alongside my infant, who really needed me a lot, who was a breastfeeding infant, who would sometimes need to fall asleep on me, who needed to be taught, who needed to be loved on, who needed to be cuddled and whatnot, and still get my job done, because it was a very different position than my previous position. I didn't feel like I was adequately giving what I should give to either side. And then throw my son into the mix. I had a son who was getting picked up at 3 o'clock from school and had to listen to his mom being on Teams meetings over the phone in the car. And this poor kid who's 3 years old and has a lot of energy had to sit there quietly while I contributed to meetings, or then had to deal with me decompressing at the same time when I should be loving on him as he gets home from school. And I didn't like that. I was feeling very convicted about that. And then I started thinking about my husband and my relationship with him, and I got very sad because I started to realize that, you know what, it's hard enough to have a child and keep your relationship strong, let alone multiple children and keep your relationship strong. And I was choosing to neglect him. Like, we didn't even really have any time to sit down and talk. I didn't like the feeling of just getting by. He and I started sitting down and discussing and really working out how our lives would look if we were going to have one of us stay at home. My husband and I have always been pretty equal in income, so it could have gone either way for us. But one of the big factors here is that my husband carries our health insurance, and so losing that would have been a big thing. And mostly though, would I have felt comfortable not having my time as a mom with my kids? he really was supportive and just wanting me to make the decision on my own. And I said, no, I feel comfortable about this. So let it go a couple days, and I was really praying about it the entire time, you guys. Like, I just didn't want to rely on my own hasty decision making. I sent in my resignation letter, and of course, you know, gave a 2-week notice and all that. I think I kind of blindsided my management team, but we talked about it, and I believe they know how I was feeling. It was a very nice parting. Thus, at the beginning of June, began my stay-at-home parent journey. At the time of filming of this video, we are 2 months in. I have never been the type of person that would have gone around saying that being a stay-at-home parent is some kind of easy cake job. And I especially knew that being the main caretaker of my son from the time he was a baby until he was almost 2.5. I absolutely know that. But I wasn't necessarily prepared for how it was going to feel to have this be my sole job. I have always had an income since I was 15 years old, and I've always been able to provide for myself and provide for my husband and my family. So now to be in a position that if something happened to his income and then we kind of have to rely on our savings maybe for a little bit, or I go out and get a job, it was a feeling that I knew could happen, but I didn't know exactly how it was going to feel. There is the fact that I am at home all day with one or both kids. And yes, we load up in the car. We have 2 vehicles, so we load up in the car and we get out and we do things. There's definitely times I feel guilt if we don't go out because we're tired or I'm tired or whatever that might be. I have struggled with a lot of feelings of inadequacy. That if I have let my guard down on something around the house and something wasn't clean because, you know, maybe my daughter didn't want to go down for a nap, or I was doing a chore while she sat next to me or something of the sort. Am I doing the right thing? Am I feeding her the right foods? Am I keeping the toilets clean enough? Am I not doing a good enough job planning our dinners? Are we scrambling at the end of the day? All these things come up every single day. And those were the things that I wasn't prepared for. And I know I'm not alone. I know that. But sometimes it's still hard to reconcile in my brain. Where I felt like I couldn't be 100% and 100% before, well, now I really have to hit 100% in one area. I don't have an excuse. So I've really had to work through that, and I've had to work through how much of my life have I been relying on keeping myself busy as an excuse. And I've had to focus a lot on contentment. Complacency scares me. So I've had to really mentally separate the ideas of contentment and complacency and be okay with being content in certain situations. And I'll say that does come quite often, like say if I'm rocking my daughter to sleep for one of her naps and she snuggled into me, we were very close. She loves mama. And we're just kind of sitting in the chair, this one. I'm in her room, I'm using it. She's got a pretty background. But we're in this chair and we're rocking, and she snuggled into me, and I'm really thankful that I have the time to do this because she may very well be my last baby. So I'm thankful I have the opportunity to do that. I'm thankful that I get to pick up my son and not be on Teams calls and have to look back at his face as he's trying to be quiet the whole time. But there's something that just sits in me that really bothers me that I'm not providing financially for my family. All that to say, I think that this is a common feeling. I don't think that I'm the only person in the world that feels that way. If you're the type of person that is struggling with this as well, you're not alone either. You can love spending time with your children, but especially if you were an overachiever your whole life and still are, you can question your decision. And on the flip side of that, you can be a mom or dad who works a full-time job and comes home and loves on your kids, and maybe you're totally content with where you are. And that's fine too. There should be no back and forth from other people on whatever your decision is. You need to sit in your own feelings, and you need to be able to work through them, and some days not feel confident in them, and some days feel completely confident in them. Because no matter what, you're working hard for your family and you're doing a good job, whether that be financially or you're at home providing for them. There's a lot of people in the United States that don't have the choice for both parents to not be working. They have to. They have bills they have to pay, they have loans they have to pay off. Hey, you're a great parent. You're an amazing parent because you're providing for your child. And oh my gosh, and like single moms and dads, like I don't know how y'all do it. I don't know. Bless you. I don't know how you all do it. You're working so hard. You're doing multiple jobs. And it's okay to sit in those feelings and wonder how something would be otherwise, while still learning to be content in the current situation that you're in. And that's just something that I really had to sit with over the last, I'd say it's set in the last month. The first month was just getting used to it. The other thing is, situations are not permanent, right? We don't know what the future brings. I know that my situation is probably temporary. I'm gonna go back to working and providing for my family financially. We set ourselves up so we're good for a set amount of time. I need to be okay with that. Where you are now is not forever, and things could change on a dime. And contentment really is key. All right, that all being said, I have kind of condensed everything up into like 5 main areas of decision making that went into our decision to have a parent at home with our kids. Looking back on them, these are kind of the biggest things that stuck out and that we really had to think about and pray about, and maybe ask some peers for opinions on and whatnot. Number 1, what are our short-term goals here? And by short-term, I mean 1 to 5 years. With my son, we didn't send him to preschool till he's almost 2.5. So he had a good 2.5 years of being here at the house with one of us almost all the time. Sometimes he was with my mom, which was great too. He learned so well, and he is so socially advanced. He does amazing in athletics, and he had a lot of one-on-one time, and that could have definitely happened in a child care village as well, but this worked the best for him, right? So we had to say, okay, well, we know this is what we know, and this is what we trust, so we would kind of like to bring that same experience into effect with our daughter. We really wanted one of us to be by her side most of the time. How long, I don't know. She's a little bit different socially, and I don't know if she'll be ready for something like preschool at 2 years old. My short-term goals with this need to be in 6-month chunks at this point in my life. So what do we want as a family for the next 6 months? We wanted to make sure that up until the time that our daughter was 1 year old, that she was with us. My husband wanted to be able to have one-on-one time with them when I could be off duty. The best way to do that would be to have somebody at home dedicating most of their time to the kids and the house and the cooking and the cleaning and whatever else, all the bill pay. Having that dedication there so that he can then spend time with the kids, some time to decompress. So then we had to look at number 2, long-term goals. Where did we want to be 5-ish years from now and forward? Granted that there's no other kids, no kids adopted, no health concerns. Everything will remain the same as now when the kids are just growing. Long-term goal would be to have both of us back working. 5 years from now, I'll have an 8.5-year-old. Whoa, that's crazy. I'll have an 8.5-year-old and an almost 6-year-old. So they'll be in elementary school. At that point, I think, things will be flexible enough that we will be able to work and still spend that time with them. If we take that time now, then that could work for later on. And now some people see that differently. Some people would rather work when their kids are younger, and then they can spend more time with them later on, or cut back on work a little bit later on. And hey, I respect that too. For us right now, we wanted to focus on those younger years just because of the success that we saw with our son. We are in a position financially where we could go for this amount of time without having to intervene with an additional job or whatever that might be. And 5 years from now, where do we want to be? Yes, we could definitely be there given the school situation, given our children's education situation. The other thing is we live in a place where we're almost, I don't want to say forced, but it's a very smart idea to not have your children go to the local school district schools. We want to be able to plan to be sending 2 children to a private school. 5 years from now, will you be paying for children's education? Will you be paying for other things down the road? What might that look like? Do you want to be moving into a larger home? We don't. Those are just some things to think about. Your emotional well-being. As I explained, I was affected greatly emotionally by the situation that I was in with not feeling like I had a lot of time to dedicate to my children. My husband was definitely feeling that stress as well. It wasn't feasible for us to be feeling that way, for the CEO and the CFO to be feeling that way. And we didn't want that broadcasted onto our children. So we went back and forth on, would our mental emotional well-being be affected negatively by me being at home? Which definitely, there's been days where I have felt down about the situation or I have felt inadequate, and that probably is reflected back onto my kids and they can sense that. But overall, I would say the level of calm in this house has greatly increased, which is what we were going for. Definitely consider your emotional state, your mental emotional state, where you are currently, and how much do you want that to change? Do you need it to change positively? And what could you be doing day in and day out to make that change? And hey, that might involve cutting your hours, quitting your job, whatever that might be. Or if you're already in the position that say I'm in and you really feel like you need to get back into work, yes, that's something that you need to be thinking about as well. If that is going to help your mental, emotional well-being, and I may get to a point where that's the case too, you need to do right by yourself, because that will also do right by your kids and your partner and your family. And of course, this is probably one of the biggest ones. What does the financial situation look like? This is a tough one because everybody's in a different state financially, right? You have some people that grandparents are willing to help pay for things during this time because they feel strongly about it, or there's savings that you can grab from, or one income's gonna cover all the bills. In our situation, one income covered all the bills and some fun money. And I'm very thankful for that, but we don't have as much fun money as we used to have because we still want my son to be able to go to his school and learn. There's been definitely a cut in discretionary funds in our house. That leaves less room for freedom for me and my husband and the kids. So you gotta think through those items. You gotta think, what activities do you still want your kids to be a part of? Can you afford them? Are you paying for private preschool? Or was your child in daycare and you would still like them to be able to go 1 or 2 or whatever day, maybe every day? I don't know, whatever that might be. Do you need to continue that on? Do you have parents that maybe you're caretaking for? Do you have bills and loans or student loans or medical bills or whatever that you need to be paying off? My professional view on this is that I would highly recommend sitting down and budgeting out every single dollar that you spend typically in a month on your regular bills, utilities, rent or mortgage, gas for your cars, all that, your groceries. Look at areas where you may be able to shave 5 to 10% off that each month to go towards fund money if you have any left over. And then also have a set aside fund each month of at least a couple $100s for emergencies, whether that be putting a car battery in one of your vehicles. We just had to do that last month for my husband's truck. Or maybe you have a big medical bill or a copay coming up that you didn't expect. We had that for my son last month. Oh gosh, I got crowned last month too. It was like another $1,000. Oh man, definitely think about that, because I think some people jump into this thinking, oh, all our bills are paid, our groceries are paid for, and then they get into it and they're like, oh no, I can't put my kid in soccer this season, or no, I can't do this, I can't do that, or I have to put this on a credit card. Do it on the mindset of, can you cut your funds, whether that's your hours or your job entirely, and still have enough to pay for what you really, really want to do and what you need to do. Also, you need to look at your personal beliefs. Do you really believe that you should have that one-on-one time with your children and that will help them grow? Or do you believe that them having a village and childcare is better for them? I mean, I can say this from personal experience. last year we needed my son because of our work schedule to be at school, even though he was ready to go. He was going to go no matter what, but we need him there the full days. We've kept him going the full days because having the village is crucial for him. So if that's part of your core set of beliefs, then that's something you need to consider as well. And maybe it is then better for your family to have that sort of schedule. You also need to ask yourself, when I go to bed every night, do I feel like I did the best job as a parent that I could possibly do based on those core set of beliefs? I can say that last year, when my son was in school, which again, he needed, when he was in school and I was working full time, was there less time with him? Yeah, sure. But he really needed that social stimulation. So even pregnant, not being able to sleep, I was laying down and going to bed, not sleep, but going to bed at night, feeling like I did a really great job as a parent for the most part. It's important to feel that way when you put your head down on your pillow, because then you can rest and you can wake up and you can be there for your kids as much as you're called to be the next day. And here's the other thing. Don't let anybody jump in and try to tell you how your core set of beliefs should look. I don't think that's right. Don't let anybody try to direct you another way and make you feel like crap about yourself. It's just not worth it. At the end of the day, what's worth it is that you get to kiss your children goodnight and you guys feel joy in your heart. So will that decision, either way, staying working or having somebody at home, will that bring about that joy? It could go either way, right? Don't let anybody else influence that. They don't pay your bills, you do. I hope that maybe this brought some clarity in some way. I know I can be kind of wordy, but I hope that it brought some clarity in some way. I hope this was helpful. I hope now we know a little bit more about each other. And yeah, have a great day.